people are afraid to confront the fact that we're alone in the universe and they need to grow up.
Sure.
However, the mathematical possibility seems obvious.
If it's strange and it's in our airspace, we should probably figure out what it is.
If I had to guess what Phoenix Lights was, it's definitely military. Do I think it was A-10s? No, I think it was something else. And they said, nah, it's A-10s. Anything that's really good here, they're going to hold it back. They have an infinite exemption to declassification if they determine that it is critical national security stuff.
Do you think Trump and Xi are going to be talking about UFOs?
We're thinking about a third term. What can we do to prop this up?
That's my guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're calling the Shaheed now, is a UFO.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that's right. That's yes.
The Shaheed also is a UFO, when you think about it.
I think you want to talk a bit about Golden Dome. It's a massive program that is maybe actually getting off the ground. You want to get us up to speed?
That's a fascinating take based off the news that I'm tracking.
Tell me.
So this week, the Congressional Budget Office released their estimate of what the Golden Dome would cost. The original administration estimate is $175 billion. The CBO estimate is $1.2 trillion. It's not just being able to buy drones, being able to buy tech. We have to scale it.
We cannot do that in a very centralized way.
Mm.
We are going to have to grant authorities down aggressively to actual units to the point where they're managing their own supply chains.
Guys, President Trump, self-described, he's the only president brave enough to open up the UFO files. So if you go to war.gov/UFO, you can see the outcomes or the outputs from the Pursue program, which is the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, Pursue, which in my mind is a massive stretch for acronyming, but it is what it is. So I just want to highlight this. I went down a few rabbit holes in the past days, weeks, months, maybe years. I'm not sure, but it's very interesting, this kind of disclosure stuff, right? This UAP, UFO, non-human intelligence. Are there, weird unidentified aircraft or other craft recovered? Is there a program the United States government is managing either directly or through defense contractors, or that it's aware of, and what's been going on since 1947 and all of that? Here's what I really want to know. Simon Coon, are you a Fox Mulder? Are you a believer, or do you just do you want to believe but you don't? Where do you land on this kind of non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial contact, aircraft, UFO stuff?
So for my personal beliefs, it depends on the day. If I'm feeling good, if I'm feeling generous and optimistic about the world, the best I can come up with is, it seems highly unlikely that folks could be engaged in such an elaborate conspiracy to conceal.
Sure.
However, the mathematical possibility seems obvious. The universe is infinitely large and expanding, and therefore, sooner or later, somewhere at some time, life will develop. So that's my optimistic. My pessimistic version is that people are afraid to confront the fact that we're alone in the universe and they need to grow up.
That's a harsh read on your pessimistic days. The president and the administration are claiming that this is a historic step in the direction of truth and government accountability and disclosure, and we're not keeping secrets anymore, and there aren't conspiracies, and we're going to release all the information. You decide for yourselves, American people, all that kind of stuff. And there are members of the government in Congress and political appointees, past and present, who are also kind of pushing for this. I think there's there's a big movement. There's been some criticism from the general public, or maybe this is just the anti-Trump commentariat, who are saying things like, this is a distraction from an Iran war that isn't going well, an economy and inflation that are not happy for the American public, and maybe an upcoming Xi-Trump summit that looks like it's going to go off the rails. And this is just typical President Trump distraction MO. What first, what do you have to say about your personal sense of this stuff? But then, do you want to comment at all on whether this is just distraction fodder or something else?
Is that to me?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Dave.
that's to you.
Yeah, Dave. Do you
So-
feel distracted?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's political motivations here, obviously.
Of course.
I'm inclined, I actually strongly agree with Simon. Like, I'm inclined to, on the general topic of intelligent life, I'm inclined to listen to the astrophysicists, right? Drake equation says the universe, like mathematically, like the universe is so large that intelligent life should probably exist somewhere. But, then Fermi paradox, if so, why is it so quiet? Then you get to like great filter civilizations maybe destroy themselves. Maybe we're too early. Maybe we're too late. There's a whole bunch of like logic there that I track and follow. So I don't believe that we've had like contact with extraterrestrial life or civilizations. And also to Simon's point, like it's just too big of a conspiracy to require too many people.
Sure.
Like
Okay.
it's hard to keep that under wraps. That's my pretty firm belief. But
Okay.
this program that they're dumping files about, like unidentified anomalous phenomena or whatever they call them, that fundamentally makes sense to me, and not in a let's find aliens kind of way, but if it's strange and it's in our airspace, we should probably figure out what it is for national security reasons.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I think this whole thing is just about from naval aviators landing back on the flight deck and not being confident in their ability to say, hey, I saw something strange, because somebody's going to make fun of them for claiming to see aliens.
Yep.
And so like we make the entire force more comfortable with talking about strange phenomenon that we need to figure out if it's, another nation's spyware.
Totally. Well, with this hot conversation going, I want to welcome everybody to the Goat Rodeo podcast, where three total experts on the topic of non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial in origin aircraft, and everything in between. I'm your host, Garrett Smith, joined by Simon Coon, Dave Caudle. We talk about geopolitics at the crossroads of defense technology, the venture ecosystem, and lots of other stuff. I'll say for myself, I am very open to the idea of contact, that maybe it has already happened, maybe it's embedded in like esoteric, ancient indigenous religious traditions or mystical stuff or whatever, and that there might be some crossover point with some of these observed weird things that everybody seems to see. Simon, before we press record, we maybe looked briefly at this incident in the mid to late 90s in Phoenix, commonly now referred to as the Phoenix Lights, where there were many large glowing orbs associated with a very, very large triangular in visage aircraft over Phoenix Metro, observed by and reported by hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, video evidence or video documentation of this event, to include a verbal recounting of observing the lights from the air by famous actor Kurt Russell, or should I say Snake Plissken, who was flying a small aircraft and landing at the Phoenix airport before returning back to Southern California in that same aircraft. Reported it. Right, there was air traffic control reporting of this. So I'm not asserting that this is anything other than something weird. I have no idea what that could have been, but there are so many kind of reported sightings like this that are out
every single year. There are reported UFO sightings when they launch an ICBM test. Every single time.
Yeah.
Without fail.
Yep.
Hundreds of people. And now we have Twitter, so you get to see all of them. Everyone goes to Twitter and goes, crazy stuff's happening over the ocean. And those are famously only happen at one place and happen not at the same time every year, but, in the same area. It looks the same every time. And no part of that community in California has ever been able to ingest, like, on the whole, like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's where they test the missiles at. They're just like, oh, shit, aliens. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. That can't be man-made. It is. It's just man-made. And certainly southwest of the U.S. is full of planes that don't exist for the purposes of not telling our adversaries about the planes that don't exist. If I had to guess what Phoenix Lights was, it's definitely military. Do I think it was A-10s? No, I think it was something else. And they said, nah, it's A-10s. Grow up, kid, especially in the 90s. We were also talking about, before we came in, Project Shad, which is something I know a little bit about from like my previous life. But Project Shad was a chemical biological weapons program in the 70s, and it wasn't declassified until 2000. And it affected about 6,000 veterans, and they spent years saying like, hey, we were a part of something and we're sick. And the U.S. government very staunchly was like, no such thing exists, because the U.S. does not acknowledge access to chemical or biological weapons. there's a list of presidential exemptions to declassification of anything under any circumstance. That includes like chemical, biological weapons. And so I'm always skeptical when the executive branch releases stuff because I'm like, anything that's really good here, they're going to hold it back. They have an infinite exemption to declassification if they determine that it is like critical national security stuff.
Well, because of the kind of the fundamentals of this podcast, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there is a national security component here, whether it's, intentionally obscured from public view or public knowledge sensitive programs. But in multiple documentary interviews with people like Secretary Rubio, they've described anomalous observations and instrument signatures and a bunch of other stuff around nuclear, facilities in the United States that are unexplained, and that alone warrants, deeper investigation. So I think here's where we'll leave the conversation. There's apparently going to be kind of a rolling release schedule where there will be another drop in war.gov/UFO or somewhere else. A drop of documents and other stuff every 30 days or so. And this is just kind of classic Trump admin, keep the pot stirred, keep it nice and chaotic and mixed up. And
yeah, distraction or not, it's a great way to drive a conversation. That's
totally,
for sure.
Totally. So I as a want to believe type, am eagerly awaiting the really juicy stuff every 30 days. I promise to keep the listener base of the Goat Rodeo podcast well informed on this topic.
Okay. You're going to be disappointed.
No, it's going to be great. It's going to work out great.
No, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Okay.
It's open for bid on Polymarket right now. I think it's 85.15, whether or not we're going to confirm contact with
what a
extraterrestrials.
Cancer.
It's basically free money.
Pretty amazing stuff, and it just in the 21st century conspiracy addled thinking of the average American, this fits right in. It fits right in. Do you think that in the upcoming Trump-Xi summit in China, which at the time that we drop this podcast, at the time it goes live, or at the time it gets published, it should be starting. It's scheduled for the 14th and the 15th of May in China. Do you think Trump and Xi are going to be talking about UFOs? Yeah, probably not. I'm going to guess not. Although, do you remember that hot mic moment where President Xi and President
That's where my
Putin
brain
are
went.
talking?
They're going to be talking about living forever.
That's right.
Trump's going to go over there and immediately be like, hey, I heard that you were talking with Putin about organ harvesting. What do you got for me? What can you do? We're thinking about a third term. What can we do to prop this up? That's my guess.
I really hope that happens and that it's hot mic'd so we all get a little bit of an inside listen.
That's a good point. What happens when world leaders get together, lean in real close? Hey, did you guys really find aliens?
What do you got?
How did you lie to your population about UFOs? Maybe I can, Okay, so the context here is that in October of last year, 2025, there was a bit of a strategic reset where both sides tried to kind of lower the temperatures on escalating stuff going on. The early days of the first year of the Trump admin saw lots of, call it saber rattling trade war stuff, tariffs, all that stuff, and it really kind of energized the international scene. And so there was a de-escalation maneuver by both sides in October of 2025. This is not intended for that. I think that the Trump administration is going in with some very specific maybe intentions or asks. Prominent in the news cycle is the Iran war and President Trump looking to overtly, potentially, ask President Xi and the Chinese to help de-escalate the war and help Iran reach the conclusion that they have lost, or to open the Strait of Hormuz, or something. So that'll be an interesting one. I've seen some critical journalist opinions out there about the folly of using the political capital on the world stage like this with a key geostrategic adversary or competitor or whatever we call China nowadays, that you would use political capital on a topic like that, that it might just show weakness or something else. So we'll see. It would be a good thing, I think, for everybody for that war to end and for the strait to open, but it's got to be happening under the right circumstances. economic rebalancing. So tariffs going back and forth all over the place. There's historic, China-led disruption in the WTO and following or not following rules there. I think the Trump administration wants to see something like reciprocity and fairness in both sides, intentions in industry and industrial policy while securing large-scale purchase agreements potentially. And then there's another one, right? There's a looming multi-billion-dollar arms sale deal on the table for Taiwan, which is a perennial topic. And there have been rumblings that the Chinese might ask for something very specific on the topic of Taiwan. So we will see. We will see. What do you guys have to say about this upcoming summit? What can we expect?
Everyone should go watch the video of Trump landing in Beijing, which includes dozens, if not a couple hundred, Chinese people with American and Chinese flags waving in a choreographed manner. It rocks.
Man. Yeah.
That man's going to come home and say, every time I land in America, there needs to be people with flags waving to choreography. That was real sharp.
He's probably going to say, like, it's got to be the Miss America cast or something, or Miss USA, or whichever one he owned or owns or whatever.
But there's like 30 or 40 CEOs, which dramatically more private sector folks than government officials.
Yeah, it is interesting. So I saw Tim Cook on the list. I saw Elon Musk on the list. I think there are a bunch of others. Yeah.
And there's a bunch that I think people would not generally think of that I think make a ton of sense. I mean, you have like BlackRock and Blackstone, but you've got Cargill, Goldman Sachs, MasterCard, Visa, Citibank, Coherent, Micron, NVIDIA, Qualcomm. It's there's some big names that I think draw attention and are somewhat controversial, but a lot of these are not. A lot of these are very like meat and potato titans of American industry. So I think that aspect of it's going to be much more fascinating than anything. Also, Rubio has sanctions on him, so that's pretty funny. He got sanctioned back in 2020 for comments on Uyghur camps and human rights abuses in China. So this is the first time he's been to China since he was sanctioned. But I assume when you travel as with a head of state, they just kind of waive it, or they give you like an exemption for the day.
I mean, when you're the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, I think they let you off the plane. Like they almost have to. What are they going to do? Arrest him?
Maybe he's there in his capacity as president of Venezuela, or as the head of the CDC. Maybe he's at the FDA.
Yeah. So here's what I'm seeing from the analyst read on outcomes. The U.S. would prefer that the outcome here is predictability. They want to assess if China is still meeting some of the previous agreements that they've made and project kind of a strength through deal making and kind of reaching some kind of like deal made accord. The China side, I think, wants first to just kind of like allow this to happen because it's a win just to get a U.S. president visiting with the kind of fanfare and menagerie and entourage that he's bringing. And because of that, I think they're just going to kind of bask in the global stature of having this kind of a massive delegation visit them. They also want to likely want to avoid some of the tariffs or snapback tariffs that were threatened last year. I think they probably will all parties will likely avoid the Taiwan topic, even though that is a big one. That being said, there is a big arms deal, right? So like something might happen in the background where there's some chip trading, horse trading, whatever, and either that goes forward because the Trump admin doesn't get what they want, or they delay it or pull it back or whatever, slow roll it because the Chinese, concede something. So I think we should watch a forthcoming, I think it's a 10 or $15 billion arms sale deal that's on the table right now, currently in stasis, and it hasn't been executed. I think that'll be a key indicator of which side got what they wanted out of this summit. And then the markets, I think, are saying that there will be a status quo outcome, which is, I guess good.
Just mutually understood limits that prevent escalation. Is that what the best outcome is here?
Potentially. It sounds to me kind of like that's a market-based assessment, not necessarily like a military escalation metric. But I'm reminded of that West Wing episode where President Bartlett's negotiating the sale of some next generation naval asset to the Taiwanese, and there's a bit of like an anchoring and a concession that's not really a concession to get the Chinese to do something and something. And I got to believe that kind of maneuver is always on the table, and it'll be interesting to see. I bet you that this does calm some of the turmoil and muddied waters around the Taiwan issue for a little while.
Mm. I feel like it's a redux of the Trump Putin summit, and I think
You
nothing
mean
but
where you mean where the U.S. Air Force flies B-2 Spirit bombers over President Putin in Alaska?
yeah,
Is
China
that what
didn't
you mean?
fly any bombers, but they did bring out the organized flag waving team, which in some ways is twice as intimidating.
It's pretty
Um,
intimidating. It's
I,
pretty
I I
intimidating.
I doubt we see much by the way of like, oh, I can draw a straight line from this to that direct outcome. I bet there's a ton of fascinating conversations around all of these business leaders being in China with the president, but I don't think you're going to see headlines around what those conversations are.
We shall see. All right, let's transition topics to. I'm going to reshuffle this a little bit. Simon, I think you want to talk a bit about Golden Dome. It's a massive program that is maybe actually getting off the ground. You want to get us up to speed?
That's a fascinating take based off the news that I'm tracking.
Tell me.
So this week, the Congressional Budget Office released their estimate of what the Golden Dome would cost. The original administration estimate is $175 billion. The CBO estimate is $1.2 trillion, of which they assume at least 70% will be space-based interceptors because they don't exist and have never existed and are extraordinarily difficult. Like, it makes counter drones seem like a walk in the park to shoot something from space before it can launch.
Hold on.
It's nuts.
It doesn't exist that we know of, right? I mean, apparently they're hiding gigantic triangular shaped craft outside of Phoenix
Yeah,
for
you
decades.
could say that. I feel pretty good about this one.
Yeah, Kurt
I feel
Russell
pretty
brought
good
him.
about all of them.
Kurt Russell brought him through the Stargate. That's where the lights came from.
Yeah, it's true.
Obviously.
When Kurt Russell was on his way back from the Stargate.
Of course, it's Kurt Ssell that saw the Stargate guy saw the lights.
Classic.
I don't. Of course, it doesn't. $1.2 trillion in 20 years. It can't exist.
It's I mean, even the chief of Space Force has already said there's a good chance the space-based interceptors go away because of how hard it is. He said this in testimony on the Hill.
So hold on a second. I buy all of that, right? Like I buy that. Like there's a gigantic proposed thing. Isn't this just like Trump admin stuff where they propose the gigantic thing and then you pare it back a little bit and it's still big, but it's less than what they promised. You know, like, but it still happens, right? I mean, like, I think that's probably what's in play.
So I don't think so, because when you say it still happens, what is it? There's
quadrupling the production of THAADs as an example, and Patriot.
That's the Golden Dome is just THAADs?
No. I'm just saying that, like, some of this will happen. Like components of this are likely to happen and get funded.
Those are components that are already happening. Like THAADs is just THAADs.
Sure.
The Golden Dome, at least to the extent that I can find anything conceptually, is a magical all-layer air defense system that can shoot down anything. I think that even if they manage to spend close to $200 billion, there will be no real substantial change in what threats we can respond to. Which is to say, even in the best case scenario Golden Dome, we are not going to be able to shoot down a concerted attack from China or Russia. The volume of missiles and the capability of those missiles is too significant. And this has always been the case. The Missile Defense Agency has been testifying at this for forever and ever and ever. So if you really start to dig into Golden Dome, they already start to kind of pare back, like, well, we're really looking at it as rogue states and like their aerial threats. But the way we talk about it in the public is like Golden Dome, all aerial threats. And all aerial threats is a massive, huge problem set. And so I think a lot of what you're going to see is like what you just mentioned, Garrett. Oh, we're gonna plus up THAADs. That doesn't necessarily change our like posture in a meaningful way to even double THAADs, right? Like you're still THAADs are what they are. They need to be in certain places to be effective, and they're.
I was going to say that's part of the shift. I'm from what I understand, it's not just that THAADs always existed or did exist previously. It's that they will exist at a higher volume and be positioned in places that protect the homeland in a way that is more significant than historically was the case.
So
am I right?
My argument is that you cannot protect the homeland more significantly than it already is. And the one exception I would say is for counter drones specifically, which is like an interesting new threat, new conversation. But missile defense is like a long, well understood problem set. And there's a couple components to it, not the least of which is if you get too good at it, the adversaries will just build more missiles and like turn it into
innovate beyond it or whatever.
Yeah, and they'll like the physics of the problem set, and this is why like we backed off of this last time in the Reagan administration, which is deterrence. You undermine your own deterrence by creating a better missile defense system, because then they create better missiles, and you're just endless like race to the top. So like that side of it, which by the Trump admin's own estimates is 70% of Golden Dome, right? Space-based interceptors, 70% of what they envision Golden Dome to be.
Yep.
I tend to agree with what the good Senator Wyden of Oregon said, and I don't typically agree with him much. It seems like a big pass through to a bunch of defense contractors they like, as opposed to we have a really credible, meaningful threat, and we're focused on solving that problem. Because if they were saying, hey, Golden Dome, laser focused on domestic defense against drones, and that's where 80% of the funding is, I'd be like, yeah, that's a serious thing. That makes sense to me. Golden Dome, 70% is space-based interceptors to knock down missiles. That's going to produce geopolitical responses that make the problem worse, not better. It doesn't really solve for cartels and things that I'm actually worried about in the homeland that could like send small asymmetric stuff. It just doesn't seem aligned to a real, genuine threat. It seems aligned to wanting to make news and wanting to have like a big flag to stick in the ground, which feels ripe for graft.
And potentially graft or whatever, friendly contract awards to favored parties, whatever contractors, the special interest set, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, like they're projecting something on the order of 7,800 satellites as part of that space-based element. There's controversy about whether this system in its proposed state, definitely not in its kind of like tested state now, is essentially ineffective against certain forms of adversary hypersonic glide vehicles, right? So like there's that kind of mismatch between the proposed, very expensive proposed technology solution, and there's obviously like enormous partisan friction, right? Like this president inspires nothing if not partisan friction.
But you look at like the flip side of it. Look at like the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group. That's $60 billion in new spending. You have not seen a single senator come out and say, hey, we got to kill that. Don't do that. They've complained a little bit about reconciliation, but conceptually, no one is saying, I don't see the need for billions of spending on drone and counter drone threat.
Yeah. So the note that I'm looking at here is Senator Jeff Merkley. You might have read this as well.
Yeah.
He's maybe like the most prominent member of the opposition in the Senate who is arguing in favor of more ground-based defenses rather than space-based alternatives because of the cost and the potential ineffectiveness of the systems. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, and I don't think CBO's estimate is correct. I think CBO often overestimates, if I'm being honest. So I don't think this costs $1.2 trillion, but it might, because space-based interceptors are such a new thing, and space is wildly expensive logistically when you get into the weeds of it.
But how much could they be off? 50%? I mean, that's still massive, right?
They could easily be off by $500 billion.
Right.
Easily.
But that is still a massive gap between the President Trump kind of headline of this will cost $180 billion, $175 billion, whatever, and the $1.2 trillion, right? So like, even if the CBO is off by 50%, okay, that's still a massive overspend potentially.
At the bare minimum, we're a
year
year and a half into the admin and have very little details on the problem they want to solve, how they actually intend to solve it, how they plan to pay for it, like what the mix looks like. Essentially, we've gotten 2 years successively in budget requests where they go, give me many billions of dollars, and then I'll tell you later.
Okay, well, as we understand, the long tail of support for complex systems like a hypothetical space-based deterrent in the Golden Dome initiative is just one kind of like flashy headline in a legacy of expensive downstream costs of acquiring any technology. So, Dave, I think you want to take us into terrain that has to do with the right to repair and a range of other stuff with military-owned, contractor-provided systems.
Yeah, it's a good segue. I think my
In
prediction
other,
on the
in
go
other
ahead.
words, it's going to cost an outrageous amount of money to sustain and maintain a space-based. Probably
Yeah.
CBO hasn't even factored that in. Maybe they have. I don't know.
Yeah, but I sort of, to Simon's point, like we'll invest billions of dollars in Golden Dome, and we'll trend away. Maybe we trend away from the interceptor, missile defeat part, and it just becomes our like infrastructure layer for future American warfare. Just further dominance of the high ground, or of the space and space assets, which is fine. I think what you're alluding toward, Garrett, this is actually Simon sent me an article about the right to repair becoming a problem in the United States military. And I think that
So this has to do with stuff we've talked about plenty on this podcast, like vendor lock-in and kind of the stultified, vertically integrated black boxing of technologies.
exactly.
I remember having systems fail out of the front lines when I was out in combat. And you basically just have to shelve it because there's no way you can fix it, right? An FSR has to come out, and there's a supply chain, and
exactly that same problem that you experience, it's just getting worse, right? So they have a bunch of complicated stuff. All of our warfighters have a bunch of complicated stuff, and this question is about, should military units be allowed to modify or repair their own drones, their own software, their own EW systems, and their own sensors without like that contractor support, or sending it back to the vendor or what have you. And I think that this is all couched in that sort of like, well, Ukraine can move really fast and fix things, sort of, what is their structure, or what are their authorities that we don't have in the U.S. Department of War that would allow us to move as quickly. But I'll let, since Simon sent me the article, I'll let him add some additional context before we argue about it.
So the article itself stems from another recent Senate hearing, which was the posture hearing for Special Operations Command. So you had the heads of each branch's special operations capabilities speaking to this problem. It's a little bit bigger than just repair, though. And they were quoted, on the issue of modification and scale, that adaptability to these sort of enemies that have no constraints in what they're allowed to do. But they also talked a bit about like the vendor lock problem, right? Where large vendors might have proprietary information, especially like once it hits mission computers, and small vendors maybe want to move fast but can't touch it, and you run into lots of bureaucratic roadblocks. And
not to mention, Simon, not to mention all of the proprietary technology that came from reverse engineering UFO recovered UFOs. So I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're calling the Shaheed now, is a UFO.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that's right. That's yes.
The Shaheed also is a UFO when you think about it. So it's an interesting set. There's a great quote from the MARSOC commanding general. And he was speaking specifically about drones, but he said, I can buy them right now. I can put them in the hands of our operators, but the ability to adapt them and make them a real capability at some form of scale is very challenging. And I think that's like the interesting operative sentence as this conversation continues to develop, is it's not just being able to buy drones, being able to buy tech. We have to scale it. It can't just sit amongst like the four guys who solved the problem and they put it on the shelf and they never think about it again. It's got to matriculate to the other teams. It's got to matriculate to the big army. It's got to be something that we all like commonly know how to fight with or ingest, or like repeat these adaptations at scale, or we're going to fall behind. People are going to die.
So,
and we cannot do that. But I think where we're going to differ here is we cannot do that in a very centralized way. We are going to have to grant authorities down, like aggressively, to actual units, to the point where they're managing their own supply chains.
Some of it's not just authorities, though, right? Like these like large vendor software problems are a perfect example. It's not just that you like lack the authority; they own their data, they own their IP. There's like a real conversation about how we acquire some of these things and what you're allowed to do with stuff that you've bought. It's one thing to like break your own drones, right? I bought it. It's physically in my hands. I need to do a thing. I'm going to break it and they can come yell at me later. It's another thing to say, I want all of them to look different now. I want all of them to do this different thing. And I'd like to use this thing that's not yours. I want to use that with your thing. And then it's this whole like, no. It's not my
So
soldier.
I'm seeing 3 different notes here in my research. So first, there's a set of executive actions. So I'm actually not sure if this exists in the form of signed executive orders yet or not. Maybe you can do some looking in the background. But the Trump administration is executing a push to mandate that all new defense contracts include unlimited technical data rights. And I'm not sure if that fits into like the government purpose rights framework that I'm familiar with in contract negotiations, or if it's something else. But that would potentially or hypothetically, according to the administration, ensure that the Pentagon owns the blueprints it pays to develop. So again, blueprints, that's kind of like an anachronism in a world of software when blueprints aren't always the thing that whatever. I think what they're referring to is just IP in the broad sense. The second big piece or category here is for 3D printing, additive manufacturing, kind of like localized forward deployed supply chains that are government controlled. And so that's like printing or whatever, stockpiling and fabricating so-called proprietary parts or replacements or spares of certain things. Think like small drone propellers or motors or whatever that might or might not be proprietary to the manufacturer or the vendor that built and fielded or delivered the capability. And then the last is a sustainment or a sustainment accountability messaging campaign. So this is more about public pressure, but this is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying things like, to contractors, if we buy a hammer from you, we own the instructions to repair the hammer, or the handle of the hammer, or whatever the quote exactly was. But I think that the messaging is clear that there needs to be a shift away from like fully contractor provided uptime in the form of like big service contracts or SLAs associated with the fielding of hardware, and to move toward government owned or government rights or government capability and capacity to maintain and sustain the technology that it buys and fields. And I think this is there's always been some tension here. The movement during the global war on terror period was to shift toward large, expansive service contracts that would allow for the government to offload a lot of this maintenance and sustainment onto contractors. And now there's maybe a shift back toward government needs to be in control of its own destiny here. And maybe that's a peacetime versus wartime dynamic. I'm not really sure. And, we'll see.
Yeah, Dave and I went round and round on this earlier, especially this like topic of peacetime versus wartime dynamic. Because I am pretty skeptical of the ability of our military organizations to scale this without some level of intentional centralization. And the example that I was kind of harping on was like the machine gun. And it's one thing to dump machine guns in guys' hands and say, hey, this is how fighting's going to happen now. Get out there. Good luck. It's another thing to be like, hey, every fifth member of your fire team has to go to a special school and is going to have this specific thing. And this is how you implement it into your fighting formation. I think if you get too far away from the centralization, you're going to run up against some organizations who just don't believe the hype, and then people die. And you saw that massively in World War One. You saw people who just wildly, at the highest levels, underestimated the impact of things like machine guns and tanks on the battlefield, and tens of thousands of people died.
I give him way more credit. I give him way more credit than that. I think if we have like the only thing that needs to be central here is some training and some exposure to the relevant technologies, technology stacks. The way the warfare is conducted, you rotate them through some schoolhouses, rotate them through Poland and back, and then give them the authorities and be impressed. I think that some folks will get it wrong. I think like there'll be sergeant first classes all over the United States military that would be able to employ their own tech stack, run diagnostics, fix things, and weaponeer these systems for whatever their specific mission is. Guarantee.
Simon, Sergeant First Class is a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps, just to translate Army for
Okay.
you. So let's
That
maybe
with or
round
without
out
cross
this.
rifles, they don't have those. Sorry.
They don't have those. They don't do that.
Okay.
Every Marine a rifleman, Simon. Every Marine a
Yeah,
rifleman.
that's so true.
So let's round out this discussion topic with maybe some discussion around whether this move toward gov-owned IP blueprints, whatever, technical whatever, the IP ownership shifting more in the direction of the government, does that stifle innovation? In other words, like when a young contractor, a non-traditional, a startup, whatever, engages in contracting, often one of the big sticking points is whether you grant government purpose rights to the resulting technology to the government. And it's a major sticking point for good reason. Like when a young company owns its IP, that young company is inherently more valuable, right? And has a higher valuation in the eyes of potential acquirers or the public market or whatever. And so I can get inside the mind space of an entrepreneur, also because I am one, right? Who thinks about this kind of thing. But at the same time, that needs to be balanced. The innovative energy in maintaining the attention of the innovation economy needs to be balanced with the realities of costs and maintenance and deployability of combat capabilities.
It's
You guys
just the
have,
realities of combat.
yeah,
If it is my goal to make sure that I am incubating the values of small companies at the expense of soldiers being able to solve the problems they need to solve at the point of friction. And candidly, like the real hard part of this happens as the companies get bigger. It's much less about the startups, and it's much more about once you're big enough to really dig out a moat for yourself around your IP. That's when you really get sticky about. Well, I can't give up this information. It's extremely valuable already now, and I just can't let that happen. The old way of doing business, right, was that the government paid for the development of the stuff, so they have this technical data rights regardless. So we're really confronting this newer reality of if we are going to push a lot of the research and development into IRAD by the companies themselves, the government no longer de facto owns it the way they have for the past 2-3 decades, which makes this issue more complicated. And what's that right balance? I don't think it's all one or the other. Similarly to like the force structure conversation, I don't think it's all give the O3 captain carte blanche. Nor do I think it's all right. You need the commandant of the Marine Corps to teach you how to walk before you can even put a drone in the air. But somewhere in the middle here, there has to be a peacetime version of this is what your left and right lateral limits are as far as like forcing things to work together.
Sure. So that like the modular open systems approach is a key component of this, and we suck at it. And partially we suck at it because primes are financially incentivized against true openness. If we can get the open systems architecture correct, I think goes a long way to solving Garrett's IP versus government purpose rights. I also think it's not that hard to separate the layers. Like the vendor can keep the core algorithms, the proprietary code, trade secrets. The government can have rights to interfaces, APIs, data formats, diagnostics tools, repair manuals. Like I think you can separate the IP and make everybody happy here. But I think at the core of it, it's modern, it's open systems architecture, and we have to get that right. And we probably have to get that right from a policy perspective to de-incentivize primes from getting it wrong.
I think any shift in this arena will have really broad-reaching ramifications. I mean, there are thousands, tens of thousands of vendors and contractors and hundreds of thousands of products and components and technologies and prototypes and different forms of contracts and all the sorts of stuff. And so I think that any shift here is going to rub somebody wrong, in other words, and we will see. And obviously the imperative is to keep the contractor base energized so that they're developing the stuff that's needed, while maintaining combat capacity and capability even under combat conditions. Let's round out with our old pastime of poking at Simon's shirt. I see a shirt that says Vincent Neil Emerson, who I actually happen to know about. He's a Texas country singer, right? And is he Native American Indian? He's like
He's
Apache Choctaw. Okay, yeah, okay. I know a bit about
I
him.
believe he's Choctaw. I should
Okay,
check
yeah.
that before I commit so aggressively.
Have you seen him live? That's the question.
Multiple times.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, great.
He's fantastic. I cannot recommend him enough. And he's got a bunch of songs, I think, in Landman and maybe in
Oh yeah,
Yellowstone
that's
as well.
You know what? I think this is where I probably first heard him.
I think
some
that's
of his
where a lot of
soundtrack
folks.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he's Choctaw Apache.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of these younger country folk, I think, get their exposure in the post radio world on TV shows because this kind of like old school country is just not going to like supplant Morgan Wallen on the two radio stations that exist in the South.
Yeah.
But similar to all of like my other favorites, he's got a record produced by Shooter Jennings, who famously did Childers' big record and Sturgill's big record, and yada yada yada.
I thought Sturgill did.
I thought it was both of them. I could.
Maybe
be
it's both. Yeah, maybe it's both. Yeah.
Shooter Jennings is the secret behind so much of the country that's out there, though. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Thanks, gents, for a rousing conversation. I gotta see Vincent Neil Emerson in person myself at some point, hopefully in an illegal warehouse. Although I don't think that's not the country
No, I've seen
Western
I've seen
thing.
him in regular venues. Yeah, I've seen him once in Richmond and once in DC. He still plays pretty small venues, so if you catch him in the next year or two, you can probably get him in a pretty good little room.
We'll see if I have free time. I doubt it.
We'll see if I have free time. Yeah, that's
We'll
fair.
see. We'll
Garrett,
see.
I'll leave you with, I'm sorry to disappoint, but it's always an aircraft, a missile, a flare, or a Mylar birthday balloon. Always.
The flare.
Well, that's what they say.
It is not
anyway.
more interesting than that.
That's what they say. That's what they say. All right. Keep your eyes peeled for that next big disclosure drop in less than 30 days. All right.
Cool.
See you guys.